porcelain doll's glassy blue eyes followed me across the room, and I knew, with ice-cold certainty, that it had seen me bury my wife. The antique shop on Maple Street had been closed for 15 years, its windows boarded up and paint peeling like dead skin. So when I saw the lights flickering inside at 3 a.m., casting dancing shadows through the cracks in the wood, I should have kept driving. Instead, I pulled over. The front door stood ajar, creaking softly in the autumn wind. Inside, dust motes swirled in the pale moonlight, filtering through broken boards. The air smelled of decay and forgotten memories. "Hello?" My voice echoed in the empty space. That's when I saw her, sitting alone on a velvet chair in the far corner. A Victorian doll with perfect ringlet curls and a blue dress that matched her haunting eyes. Her porcelain face was flawless, almost luminescent in the dim light. Emily had been asking for a doll for months. After what happened to Sarah after the accident, I'd been trying to find ways to make my daughter smile again. The guilt was eating me alive. The way Sarah's car had skidded on that wet road, how she'd looked at me with those dying eyes, how easy it had been to let the steering wheel slip. "She's beautiful, isn't she?" I spun around. An elderly woman emerged from the shadows, her silver hair wild, her eyes clouded with cataracts. She wore a tattered black dress that seemed to absorb the light around her. "The shop? I thought it was closed," I stammered. "For her, it's never closed." The woman's gnarled fingers traced the air toward the doll. "She's been waiting for the right father, the right situation." Something in her voice made my skin crawl, but Emily's tear-stained face flashed in my mind. "How much?" "No charge. She chooses her family." The woman's smile revealed teeth like broken glass. "But remember, she sees everything, remembers everything." I should have left then, should have run. Instead, I carried the doll to my car, its weight unnaturally heavy in my arms. Emily's eyes lit up when she saw the doll. The first genuine smile I'd seen since the funeral 3 months ago. "She's perfect, Daddy." "What's her name?" I looked at the doll's face, those blue eyes that seemed to track movement. "I don't know, sweetheart. What do you think?" "Helena," Emily whispered, cradling the doll close. "Her name is Helena." That night, I tucked Emily into bed, Helena positioned carefully on the nightstand. The doll's face was turned toward the window, toward the backyard where the freshly planted roses bloomed unseasonably late. "Daddy," Emily's voice was small in the darkness. "Helena told me something." My blood turned to ice. "What's that, honey?" "She said Mommy didn't really die in a car accident." The words hit me like a physical blow. That's silly, Em. Dolls can't talk." "Helena's different." Emily's eyes reflected the moonlight, wide and trusting. "She says she can see things, bad things." I forced a laugh, but it came out strangled. "Just a bad dream, sweetheart. Get some sleep." But as I closed the door, I could swear I heard a soft whisper. "She knows." The next morning, I found Emily in the backyard, sitting cross-legged beside my rose garden. Helena was propped against a garden stone, her glassy eyes fixed on the freshly turned soil. "What are you doing out here, Em?" Helena wanted to see the roses. Emily's voice was matter-of-fact. "She says they're growing too well for October, like they're being fed." My hands shook as I poured coffee. The roses were magnificent, deep red blooms that seemed to pulse with life. Unnatural for the season, unnatural for the location. "Plants grow differently sometimes," I said carefully. "Weather's been strange." Emily tilted her head, studying me with an expression too mature for her 7 years. Helena says the ground is soft because something's underneath, something that used to walk and talk and breathe. The mug slipped from my hands, shattering on the patio stones. Coffee spread like blood across the concrete. "That's enough, Emily. Come inside." But she didn't move, just sat there, stroking Helena's porcelain face, both of them staring at the spot where Sarah lay 6 feet under. The whispers started that night. I jolted awake at 2 a.m. to the sound of Emily's voice drifting down the hallway, not distressed but conversational. Having a chat with someone. Her door was slightly ajar, spilling pale moonlight into the dark corridor. I crept closer, heart hammering against my ribs. "Yes, I remember the rain that night," Emily was saying. "Daddy was driving. Mommy was crying." I pressed myself against the wall, barely breathing. "He said it was an accident, but you saw it differently, didn't you?" Silence. "The wheel. He let it slip on purpose when the car went around the bend. You saw his hands, didn't you, Helena?" My vision blurred with panic. How could she know? Emily had been at her grandmother's that night. She couldn't possibly. "I know you want to tell someone," Emily continued, her voice dreamy. "But who would believe a little girl and her doll?" I stumbled backward, my elbow hitting the wall with a soft thud. The conversation stopped abruptly. "Daddy?" Emily called sweetly. "Are you awake?" I forced myself to breathe normally. "Just checking on you, sweetheart." Helena says hello. When I peered around the door frame, Emily was sitting up in bed, Helena cradled in her arms. Both pairs of eyes, one brown, one glassy blue, stared directly at me. In the moonlight, I could swear the doll's lips had curved into a smile. Detective Morrison arrived on a Tuesday, his weathered face grim as he stood on my front porch. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had called in a noise complaint, said she'd heard arguing from my house the night Sarah died. Argument that happened hours before the supposed accident. "Just routine questions, Mr. Davidson. Mind if I come in?" My palms were slick with sweat. "Of course." "Can I get you some coffee?" Emily appeared in the doorway. Helena clutched tight to her chest. Morrison's expression softened when he saw her. "And who's this little lady?" "I'm Emily. This is Helena." She held up the doll, its blue eyes catching the afternoon light. "Helena has something to tell you." "Emily, why don't you go play in your room?" I said quickly. But Morrison was already crouching down, his cop instincts engaged. "What does Helena want to tell me, sweetheart?" Emily glanced at me, then back at the detective. "She says she saw what happened to Mommy. The real story." Morrison's eyes sharpened. "Oh, and what's that?" "Helena says Daddy didn't try to save Mommy when the car went over the edge. She says he watched her drown in the creek and then pulled her out later to make it look like an accident." The blood drained from my face. "She's been having nightmares. Her imagination—" "Helena doesn't have nightmares," Emily interrupted. "She has memories. She remembers how you held the steering wheel steady until the last second, then jerked it hard to the right. How you unbuckled your seatbelt before impact, but left Mommy's buckled. How you waited until she stopped moving before you called 911. Morrison stood slowly, his hand moving instinctively toward his radio. "Mr. Davidson, I think we need to have a longer conversation downtown." "You can't believe a child's fantasy," I protested. "It's just a doll." "Maybe," Morrison said, his eyes never leaving mine. "But funny thing about kids, they see more than we think. and sometimes truth comes out in the strangest ways. In the police station's harsh fluorescent lighting, I broke down and told them everything. How Sarah had discovered my affair, how she'd threatened to take Emily and leave, how I'd seen one moment of opportunity on that rainy night and taken it. She was going to destroy our family, I sobbed. I couldn't let her take Emily away from me. Morrison leaned back in his chair, disgust written across his face. So, you killed her, made it look like an accident. I didn't mean for it to happen that way. The car started to skid and I just didn't correct it in time. Bullshit. You steered into that creek on purpose. Let your wife drown while you saved yourself. I buried my face in my hands. How could Emily know? She wasn't even there. Kids pick up on things. Maybe she overheard phone calls. Maybe she saw more than you realized. Morrison's voice was cold. Or maybe that doll really did see everything. He was joking, of course, but something in his tone made me look up. Where is Emily now? Child Services picked her up an hour ago. She's safe. Safe. The word echoed in my mind as they led me to my cell. At least Emily was safe. Emily came to see me 2 weeks later, accompanied by her new caseworker. She looked smaller in the prison's visiting room, but her eyes were bright and clear, clearer than they'd been since Sarah's death. Helena sat in her lap, those blue eyes fixed on me through the reinforced glass. Hi, Daddy. Hi, sweetheart. How are you doing? Good. Helena and I are staying with Aunt Margaret now. She has a big house with lots of rooms. I nodded, fighting back tears. I'm glad you're somewhere safe. Emily tilted her head, studying me with that unnaturally mature expression. Helena wants to tell you something. What's that? Emily leaned closer to the glass, her voice dropping to a whisper. She says thank you. Thank you? For what? For helping her find the truth. She's been looking for someone like you for a very long time. The caseworker shifted uncomfortably. Emily, maybe we should... Helena says she's not really a doll, Emily continued, her eyes never leaving mine. She says she used to be a little girl just like me. A little girl whose daddy did bad things to her mommy. Ice formed in my veins. Emily, what are you saying? Helena's been waiting for someone who would understand, someone who would help her story be told. Emily's smile was sweet and innocent. She says she's been in that antique shop for 80 years, waiting for the right daddy, the right situation. My hands pressed against the glass, trembling. That's impossible. Helena says she's helped lots of daddies tell the truth. She finds them, goes home with them, and waits for the right moment. Emily's voice was dreamy, distant. She says it's her job now, her purpose. Emily, you're scaring me. Helena isn't scary, Daddy. She's just honest. Emily stood up, cradling the doll. She says to tell you that you're not her first daddy, and you won't be her last. As they led her away, I caught one last glimpse of Helena's porcelain face. For just a moment in the harsh prison lighting, I could swear I saw another face superimposed over the doll's features. A young girl with hollow eyes and a mouth frozen in a silent scream. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Helena's face morphing between porcelain perfection and something far more human, far more tragic. The next morning, I called the prison library and asked them to research the antique shop on Maple Street. What I found made my blood run cold. The shop had been owned by the Brennan family for 3 generations. In 1943, 7-year-old Helena Brennan had been found dead in the shop's basement. Her father, Thomas Brennan, had been arrested for the murder of his wife and the abuse of his daughter. He'd confessed under interrogation, claiming his daughter's spirit had somehow compelled him to tell the truth. The shop had closed shortly after, but according to local records, it had a habit of reopening at random intervals, always briefly, always when a certain type of man needed to be found. I kept reading, my hands shaking as I turned the pages. 1956. Robert Hayes, convicted of murdering his wife after his daughter claimed her doll had witnessed the crime. 1963. William Foster, same story. 1971. Michael Torres. 1988. James Sullivan. The pattern was always the same. A desperate father, a daughter who needed comfort, a doll that knew too much. And now it was my turn. 6 months later, I read in the prison newspaper that the antique shop on Maple Street had opened again. Just for one night. Just long enough for another desperate father to find exactly what he was looking for. The article was brief. Just a few lines about how 3-year-old Anna Winters had helped solve her mother's murder case. How she told police that her new doll had seen everything. How her father had confessed within days of bringing the doll home. I stared at the accompanying photo. A little girl with dark hair and sad eyes, clutching a porcelain doll with perfect ringlet curls and a blue dress that matched her haunting eyes. Helena had found her next family. 25 years have passed since that night in the antique shop. I've been in prison for most of Emily's life, watching her grow up through letters and rare visits. She's a teacher now, married to a good man who treats her well. They have a daughter of their own, a beautiful little girl named Sarah, after the grandmother she'll never meet. Emily still writes to me, though she never mentions Helena. I've never asked what happened to the doll. Some questions are better left unanswered, but last week I received a letter that made my blood freeze. Dear Daddy, it began in Emily's neat handwriting. I have something to tell you, something I've kept secret for all these years. My hands trembled as I read on. Helena never left. She's been with me all this time, waiting, watching. She says her work isn't done yet. She says there are more stories to tell, more truths to uncover. You see, Daddy, Helena didn't just help you confess. She helped me understand something important about myself, about what I'm capable of. I know you think I was an innocent child who just repeated what a doll told me. But the truth is, I saw everything that night. I was hiding in the back seat when you killed Mommy. I saw you steer into the creek. I saw you unbuckle your belt and leave her to drown. Helena didn't tell me what happened. I told her, and she listened. She understood. She helped me find the courage to make sure you paid for what you did. But here's what you don't know, Daddy. Here's what Helena really taught me. I didn't just want justice. I wanted revenge. And Helena showed me how to get it. You see, the antique shop doesn't just open for desperate fathers. It opens for anyone who needs to find the truth. Anyone who needs to make sure justice is served. Helena and I have been very busy over the years. We've helped so many families find peace. So many children get justice for their murdered mothers. And now it's time for the final lesson. The one Helena saved for last. I'm not your daughter, Daddy. I never was. Sarah never had a daughter. She couldn't have children. That's why she was so upset when she found out about your affair. Why she was threatening to leave you. I'm Helena, Daddy. I've always been Helena. The little girl whose father killed her mother in 1943. The little girl who died in that basement and came back as something else. Something that could move between flesh and porcelain, between life and death. Emily Davidson never existed. She was just a shell I created to help you tell your story, to help you confess, to help you pay. And now that my work is done, now that justice has been served, I can finally rest. Thank you for helping me find peace, Daddy. Thank you for being exactly the kind of monster I needed you to be. Helena Brennan P.S. Don't look for Emily. She was never real. But Sarah's roses are still blooming in the backyard. They'll bloom forever now, fed by the truth you buried beneath them. The letter fell from my numb fingers as the prison alarms began to wail. Through my cell window, I could see smoke rising from the town below. The newspaper would report it as a gas leak explosion. The entire Davidson house on Elm Street had been destroyed, along with the beautiful rose garden in the backyard. But I knew the truth. Helena had finished her work. The shell she'd created, the little girl I'd thought was my daughter, had served its purpose. Now she was free to move on, to find another family that needed her particular brand of justice. That night, for the first time in 25 years, I saw her in my dreams. Not as the porcelain doll with the blue dress, but as she truly was. A 7-year-old girl with hollow eyes and a mouth frozen in a silent scream. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice like wind through dead leaves. "Thank you for helping me remember what it feels like to be real." When I woke, there was a news report on the prison television. The antique shop on Maple Street had opened again, its windows glowing with warm light. A young father had been seen entering just after midnight, carrying a small wrapped bundle. His 3-year-old daughter had been asking for a doll. A very special doll. One with perfect ringlet curls and a blue dress that matched her haunting eyes. The cycle was beginning again. And somewhere in the darkness, Helena Brennan was smiling.